I worry about using this term a little bit because it sounds a bit negative, but I refer to FSHD as my dark angel because for me, it's always been this shadowy presence in the back of my life. And the angel reference is because of the wings and the scapula. My scapula are sort of my wings in a way, So there's sort of a metaphorical sort of turn of phrase to it. But I feel as though, my dark angel has been sending little shots across the bow for most of my life, but they were very easy not to notice and to fob off as being all kinds of other things. But once the diagnosis comes through, you see, oh, you were always there. You were always there.
Hi, I'm Leanne Watson. I'm so happy to have you here on our podcast talk show, You, Me and Muscular Dystrophy. I'll be asking 10 questions of each guest, exploring the humanity and experiences of living with MD. I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome back to You, Me and Muscular Dystrophy. I'm coming to you from the unceded lands of the Indigenous Kulin Nations Wadawurrung people. I know very little about my guest today, Paul Bugeja, except that he comes from the Ugamba lands of the Gold Coast, has FSHD and is writing a book. Let's all share in Paul's MD story together. Hi, Paul. Welcome today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And what has FSHD meant for you? What is it and what does it mean for you?
Yeah. So the thing with FSHD is it's probably one of the least spoken about of the muscular dystrophy sort of like umbrella. A lot of people have never heard of it. In fact, even when I say MD, they think MND or MS or, you've had all this before as well, I'm sure. For me, I sort of probably approach this in a way that's a little bit unique. For me, it was an awakening more than anything else. It was this moment of a lot of things suddenly making sense, as any sort of diagnosis of some kind can be for people, because it sort of gave me this new sort of springboard to bounce off into the next part of my life after I was diagnosed with it in the back of my life, and not limiting me, but actually opening up a whole new sort of like landscape in front of me. So I guess in a way I'm slightly lucky. I don't like using that word actually, but I feel that I am lucky in some ways because mine is very slowly progressive. So as it stands, most people are quite surprised when they learn that I have FSHD, even though I certainly have all of the symptoms that come with FSHD, but they're just still not so advanced that anyone who is untrained would be able to, sort of pick up.
And what age were you when we've had a couple of guests on who've sort of known from, school age that they had FSHD? Were there any signs for you that young? What age were you?
Yep. So I was diagnosed at about 35. So again, quite a late diagnosis. Diagnosed because, which I think this is interesting, I was at the gym and my gym instructor noticed that my scapula was winging, something that I had just associated with being a really slim person, of course.
Yes.
And this is the problem a little bit with FSHD. So many of the symptomatic sort of aspects of it are just things that in the normal run of life, for someone who doesn't have FSHD, you could palm off as being something else completely, something non-related to FSHD or a neuromuscular disease. So, I was diagnosed quite late. But prior to that, and this, I guess, can feed in a little bit to talking about the book that I'm writing. So I'm currently writing a book about my journey with FSHD, and it's actually exactly what you're talking about. It's almost like a whodunit, where I'm looking back on my early life and trying to find the breadcrumb trail of evidence that if I'd known at age 0 that I had FSHD, would have made sense, all the little things along the way. So there are definitely signs, like now that I can look back with the knowledge.
Yes, yeah. I was going to mention that I know I was adult onset diagnosed as well with Limb-Girdle muscular dystrophy at 42. But I sort of had the same. You look back and there were lots of little telltale signs leading up to it. And the biggest one was that I was losing weight by then. And that's why I, spent a few years investigating because it didn't, it wasn't right. But it is interesting, isn't it? That, you keep sort of making it, keep sort of working through it. And one of the things I blame LGMD on is I was never good at sport or throwing or anything. And that's my excuse now.
So do you know one of the one of the sections of the book is called "I Was Always an Unco Kid" because I was
Right.
uncoordinated as a kid, and
Yeah.
it's very easy just to be the kid that isn't good at sport, that
Yeah.
trips over his own feet. Oh, wait a second, that's because of the foot drop. Like, so
Yeah.
again, like it's very easy for this condition to mask itself effectively. And without
Mm.
giving too much away about my book, whether it'll ever get published is another thing. And I worry about using this term a little bit because it sounds a bit negative, but I refer to FSHD as my dark angel because for
Mhm.
me, it's always been this shadowy presence in the back of my life. And the angel reference is because of the wings and the scapula. My scapula are sort of my wings in a
Yeah.
way. So there's sort of a metaphorical sort of turn of phrase to it. But I feel as though, my dark angel has been sending little shots across the bow for most of my life, but they were very easy not to notice and to just to fob off as being all kinds of other things. But
Mm.
once the diagnosis comes through, you see you were always there. You were always there, albeit sometimes very far back in my life and not
Yeah.
affecting me at all. But yeah, it's a really interesting process. And I would actually almost encourage anyone who has any kind of illness or disability that is ongoing or chronic medical condition to have a think about doing this. It does take some sort of not moral, sorry, some mental fortitude to do it because it can be quite
Yeah.
confronting. But I'm a journalist and work in the media, so knowledge is all powerful to me. So I think the
Mm.
more knowledge I have about this, the better for me. But I can understand for some people that knowledge can be overwhelming too. So it's something to maybe do if you're the sort of person that feels being so investigative about your life and might help you understand and then be a positive thing, which it wouldn't be
Yeah,
for
that makes sense. Yeah, that's great, and go on to help other people who are reading,
exactly.
reading the book and sort of go, "Oh, yeah, that's my story too," or very similar, and that's why we've got you and me for dystrophy as well,
Yep,
which is great.
exactly.
So when you were young, obviously now we know that you didn't know that the dark angel was lurking around. And what did you imagine your grown-up life would look like, and has this vision changed much as MD has impacted your life a bit now?
Look, the answer is yes and no, which is not very helpful. So, in terms of like, I did have a vision for the rest of my life, and like I remember in grade 2 it was to become an archaeologist. By about grade 4 it was I want to be an actor. Like it changed, of course.
Mm.
But I did end up, the thing that really stuck with me was becoming an actor. And in fact, I did, and I studied at the Victorian College of the Arts, did a drama degree there, did some professional acting after that. But the irony was that was at a time when leading up into my diagnosis, like it was in my late 20s, early 30s. And there's even a chapter on how the acting in my life threw up signs that I probably had some kind of something working in the background that I wasn't
Yeah.
aware of, namely the FSH. So while I would say it did impact my choices, and it probably has changed the trajectory of what I would have envisaged myself as a much younger person to now. I've also lived a very, like, I like to use the term life less ordinary, and my favorite quote is from the Robert Frost poem, which is, I came upon, two paths in a wood and I took the one less traveled and that has made all the difference. I'm paraphrasing there, obviously, but it's about taking the road less traveled, basically. And
Mhm.
so I think because I have that attitude, whenever I've been thrown off the path or road that I thought I was going to take professionally, personally, otherwise, I'm ready just for the next path. So again, this is where I come from disability and chronic illness, maybe with a slightly different viewpoint to a lot of others. I see it as an opportunity as much as anything else. For me, it rarely see it as an obstacle. And again, I always say that in terms of I'm lucky that mine is a very slowly progressing version. So I can come at it differently to someone who's progressed far more than I have. And I'm very cognizant of not trying to sound like, oh, I can make it, I make it all sound so easy, because it
Mm.
isn't. And I've seen people far more progressed than me who have far more struggles than I do. And my heart goes to them. And if I can do anything to help them, I would do it tomorrow. But yeah, I think even people like I have a friend, for example, with MS at the moment who's going through a very difficult journey with that. And she's in a far more difficult situation to me in terms of how it's impacted her life. But even when we talk, I can still hear hope in her voice, and it's because she's just that person. She's the person who refuses to give up. Another thing will come along and slam her, and another thing, and it does impact her for a while, and then she lifts herself up and gets on with it again. And to be fair, I think a lot of people in our community and the broader disability community can be very good at that and underestimate how good at they can be.
How bounce. how strong, and they don't give themselves enough credit for how they look,
That's exactly
for the opportunities and for the ways to get over things, and learning to ask for help, and all the myriad other things that you sort of learn along the way.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
exactly.
that's great. Yeah. So, um, was there anything that you wished you knew when you were diagnosed that you know now? Like, would anything have made it easier for you to have known back then? Because,
So yeah,
like a lot of MDs, and you've already, told us the trajectory is different for everybody as well. So that would have made it a bit uncertain for you.
yeah, and especially with FSHD, like some people can live with it their entire life and not be aware they even have it because it can be so mild and so sort of like non-impacting on their life. Others, at the age of 20, I remember going to an information session once, and there was a young woman who was pregnant, at about 22 or 23, and she was already very impacted by it, and of course the pregnancy impacted it even more, because of the weight she
Mm.
was carrying. And so I've seen it at both ends, in terms of whatever. So in terms of myself, I would say it's tricky because in the beginning of the book, I talk about how the first probably 10 years after diagnosis, nothing felt any different to me, except I
Mhm.
knew, which is a big thing, like hardly anything changed. Because again, it was so slowly progressing. Probably the only things that changed was my awareness, which meant that, certain things at the edges of my life, I finessed a little bit to sort of help me manage it. There are like some things began to happen, like, for example, the foot drop did get a little bit worse. So, you know, I, I sometimes wonder if I'd known at 20 instead of 35, we might have been able to put in place some more, even though that was pre NDIS and more support for people living with disability. But I might have been able to do some things to slow the progression of the foot drop. I mean, pure luck, and I'm a fatalist, so I believe in fate. I very adroitly and, again, luckily, started going to gym at about age 27 or 28. And it was because I was a tall, skinny boy who wanted to put on muscle and weight, not knowing I had FSHD, which means, guess
Mm.
what? You can't put on muscle and weight. That one thing, that bit of luck of going, because it was there, I was working at a university, it was easy to go to the gym, that actually has probably been massively beneficial to me in terms of slowing the progression. And I've spoken to neurologists about it and GPs about it and exercise physiologists and the likes, and they agree. So again, I think that is interesting in that, again, if I'd been diagnosed at 20, maybe I would have started going to gym at 20, and who knows how much slower I could have made this progression by doing that.
And do they mention that that's because that's sort of a bit different? From advice that I've received over the years. Do they say that there's a fine line though, as to
Absolutely.
the amount of fitness, amount of exercise you should be doing? Because once we break muscle to build it up, we don't build it up anymore. Like we, as in LGMPD people, don't. And I'm sure it's pretty similar to you.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And so this is why I'm probably lucky I got diagnosed within about 5 years or so of going to the gym effectively, because um, I always just assumed things about myself and just pushed myself harder, even though I could only ever go so far. Certainly, I'm only actually just about to see an exercise physiologist for the first time, but I've had physios and osteos and friends who are personal trainers around me, giving me just the guidance at the edges. But also, I've just listened to my own body, which is,
Mm.
right, you should only lift this much weight because it doesn't feel right to lift more. So I've gone with my
Yes.
intuition a little bit, but knowledge is critical. And I do know, say, with the working out aspect, I seem to have, again, bit of luck, found the right balance at this point. But luckily, in the latest repackaging of my NDIS package, they added an exercise physiologist because an OT identified I should have one. So I'm really super keen to have my first session with them and probably have them say, stop doing some of that, please, but
Yeah.
please do more of that. So
Yeah, that's right. So you've got more direction then.
that's exactly right.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So did that answer what was anything you wish you knew when you were diagnosed? Was that about that exercise is a great thing? Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
probably just I could have tailor-made the exercise to be more
Yes.
useful long term if I'd known much
You've
younger.
known. Yeah.
I don't think it would have changed much else
No.
because, again, my life's taken a really crazy path anyway. And I can't think of anything that I've done since diagnosis that I wouldn't have done. But then,
Mhm.
how can we know ever? Like,
Yes, yeah.
but it's an interesting question to ponder. Like, I think
Yeah.
that's why my book is interesting because it at least gives me markers where I think if I'd when I played the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz, if I'd realized that holding my arms up in a certain fashion was difficult because I had FSHD,
Uh,
we might have done something different in that show to make it easier for me. But instead they were like, get your arms up, so
yeah,
it's
and you wouldn't have thought, yes, yeah.
no,
I know what you mean. Yeah, I've had sort of times like that with other things.
yeah.
So what has been your most pivotal moment? You can answer it in terms of your MD, FSHD, or in terms of your life, really. And yeah, what's been your most pivotal moment, I guess? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I was saying at the very beginning, I think diagnosis, I mean, it sort of sounds like really obvious and cliche to say it, but the
Mm.
diagnosis moment is like, it's the moment where that spins on a dime, like for some
Mm.
people, it can send them down a really dark path, which is, like a very difficult time. And, I completely can understand that. But, for me, it flipped me the other way. Like it just gave me such a lust for life because suddenly I could bounce forward with the knowledge and not have it constrain me, but be mindful of it, so that um, uh, anything that I did, like it certainly didn't stop me doing anything, but it did make me think twice about certain aspects of my life. So yeah, I think, like for example, no one else in my family has been for any genetic testing at all, and they
Mm.
should because so it's a matrilineal line that it comes through. My grandmother and her niece had FSHD, and her nephew had Duchenne. So like there is a genetic sort of like whatever, like
Link
weird
somewhere. Yeah.
yeah, in our family. And if there's two FSHD, there's no doubt there's probably a third one somewhere in the bigger family.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why I think being scared of diagnosis, if you notice things about yourself, can be worse than being diagnosed sometimes, because you can let something go on and on and on, not be able to do something about it. So
Did it
yeah,
take you long to get diagnosed? What
it
was
was
your initial?
yeah, it was pretty quick. So after the personal trainer noticed the winging scapula, I went to see an ex physiotherapist, but a sports physiotherapist, because we thought it might be some injury from working out or whatever. The
Mm.
sports physio did some work with me. Initially, it was a very odd situation. He thought it might be a virus that I'd had as a child, which was compromising the muscle groups in my spine as opposed to anywhere else. But he said, look, it could also be neurological. So I would say within the space of about 6 to 8 weeks after the gym instructor noticing the winging, I was in the neurologist rooms at Royal Melbourne
Gosh.
Private. Yep, yep. So it was pretty quick, and then
Mm.
he did some really basic not basic diagnostic stuff, which is pretty simple stuff. Which now that you look at, you go, "Wow, I've never been able to do this, this, and this. How crazy!" And then we did a biopsy in just to confirm it, and
Yeah.
then it was confirmed with biopsy within, I guess, the next month or so.
And have you had genetic testing as well
Genetic
for
testing,
yourself?
yep. Yep, I've done everything. I've done saliva testing. I've done like everything possible, but the genetic testing happened well over 10 years ago. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, great. Yeah. And where do you find your hope and joy?
So good question. Again, I come from a different place around this, and like I just feel every day is a blessing to me, and I'm not a religious person, so not a blessing in that sense, but in the more generic sense of the word. Like my life is not perfect, it's not. Like there are lots of things about my life that could have been very different. Like I chose not to have children because I didn't want to pass this on, even though it's matrilineal. I wouldn't take the chance. I just wouldn't do it. And by 35, I was sort of getting to that point of, well, will I, won't I anyway. So, like, even though there's definitely some aspects of this that have changed the parts of my life that might have gone a different way, I still wake up most days and just feel just so like lucky to be able to get on with the next day. I still have a job that I love. So life is just mostly up. Like, so I'm not one of these optimists who always sees rainbows and unicorns by
Yeah.
any stretch of the imagination. I'd like to call myself either an optimistic pragmatist or a pragmatic optimist, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Pragmatism is how I live my life. It's all about what's practical and what
Yeah.
works, but I tend to do it in an optimistic kind of way. So just being able to do what I'm still doing, to be able to work, to still be able to travel, which I'm lucky I'm able to do, to still have good connections with my family and friends, even though a lot of them don't live anywhere near me. Like, I just feel like as much as there are some things I'd love to be different, in general, I've been able to embrace what's possible and do as much as I can with that.
And yeah, your hope and joy is in all your connections and all the many choices that are still
Yep,
available to you. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's great. Who wouldn't who couldn't or wouldn't you want to live without?
Yeah, okay.
Is that a person or a group of people or
Hmm.
a silly question?
No, I mean, like, so I call myself a collector of souls. Like, I don't tend to let people go out of my life very quickly. And, I could probably name on one hand how many people I've eventually thought there's no space in my life for you anymore, or our lives have diverged so much that there isn't a connection anymore. Like, I've got friends from as far back as, middle of primary school to friends that I've made in the last 2 weeks. So I think the people, there is a very, I don't want to lose any of those people. Like, they're all really important to me because they all bring such different things to my life. I'm an only child, so I do look down. I mean, I do have a half brother and a half sister and some step siblings, but I still feel like an only child in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. So I think my parents are older; they're in their like sort of late 70s and early 80s. Once they go, I will miss them, and like I could very easily say I don't want them to be not in my life anymore. Like that would be a sad thing. But I'm also, again, like this pragmatist who knows that not
Yeah.
everything changes, nothing ever stays the
Yeah.
same. So again, it's almost this, not live for the moment thing. So I don't necessarily think that's the best way to live life either, but it's just take everything as it is right here and now and embrace it. And so I want to, look, I want it all. I don't want to lose any of it, like it's all important to me basically.
That's great. And do you think the diagnosis has, like, you seem to have naturally had that sort of personality anyway. Do you think the diagnosis has, like, made you want to live, your very best life? Like, has it sort of made it even more important to you to,
Yeah.
get all the joy you can out of the people around you and your experiences and things?
Yeah, so you will appreciate this, as will anyone
Mm.
listening who lives with neuromuscular disease or any kind of disability potentially. Sometimes we don't know where this is going. Or in fact, we don't. None
Yeah.
of us really know. I mean, sadly, say for someone with Duchenne, they know where it's going. Like, there's
Yeah.
a point where, unfortunately, there just isn't
Yes.
anything much beyond that. The tricky thing with FSHD is that like I could not have any progression for the next 30 years, and then suddenly, bang, I could be in a chair. Like having to use mobility aids or whatever. None of which would be a problem. I would just jump on and get on with that. Like that. That's not my issue. It's just more there is a level of uncertainty around this. I have moved around a lot over the past 15 years. So tracking the trajectory is a little tricky with me because I've seen neurologists in different states. I've seen physios in different states. So, I think the thing about the diagnosis is it's just given me that extra kind of like, not kick up the bum, but just the like, just do what you can while you can. Like, I mean, COVID taught us the same thing, right? Like, things can change in a moment, and with people with disability, depending on the disability, it can change like overnight. You could wake up the next day and something could dramatically have changed, or you could wait 20 years and nothing might change.
Yeah.
That uncertainty, which I think can throw people, because human beings crave certainty, like we just,
Yeah, we do like it, don't we?
yeah. So I've learned to embrace the uncertain, and I think that's maybe what I got from this is you have to almost embrace it and find a way to live within the eye of that paradox of wanting stability but knowing nothing is stable, but
Mm.
seeking stability of some kind still. And so your life becomes smaller and bigger, even though that sounds contradictory, so yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
get that. What, going down to really practicals now, what device or gadget makes your life easier?
So because I work in the media, I mean, my life is all about devices and gadgets all the time. So at present, I don't have, I'm still able to pretty much, even though it's a scapular and humerus that are affected by this, I still have pretty good use of my arms. So most of my work is at a keyboard. So I'd be lost. I mean, I don't want to give iPhone and Apple a plug here, but I'd be lost without my Apple devices because they're all interconnected. Like, they all talk to each other. I can sit on my laptop but be sending text messages because it talks to my Apple account on my phone.
Yeah.
Like, it's this technology, and look, you would appreciate it. Anyone with disability or not, can appreciate technology.
Yeah.
Tech is the way forward.
But
There isn't.
technology, I think, as your physical abilities decline, that technology that you're talking about, the Apple, and we might as well mention them because
Do it
they
well.
pretty well rule
Yeah.
the world. But like what's kind of convenient for able-bodied people becomes more and more essential, really, to those of us with disability. And that's really how I do almost pretty well everything. Yeah.
And if you think about it, like, the talk to text thing has
Yeah.
becomes better every 5 minutes. It feels like it understands. The understanding is it's so beyond now that I mean, like, of course, sometimes if I use talk to text, it still puts a whole lot of jumble there and you think, oh, it's misheard me or you're speaking too quickly, as I tend to do. But generally, I could see going forward, like, I'm not too worried about if I do start to lose some mobility or, sort of like physicality in my upper body, because I think by the time that happens, the talk to texting is going to be even better and it probably won't be a problem,
Yes,
um,
yes.
by then maybe it'll just be think to screen, like, I mean, it's not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in a lot of ways, it's never, I've said a few times, maybe some of the listeners are getting sick of it. I don't know if I've said it very often on the podcast, but it's one of the better, well, it's definitely the best time if you're going to be disabled. 2025 is, the best time, I guess,
True.
for so many, it still gives us so many options, to maintain the quality of life we have.
Yeah.
What resources helped you navigate your MD, your FSHD?
Yeah. So, yeah, given what the arena that I work in, I'm already kind of a natural researcher, So, I mean, I did a lot of my own research, mostly online. And early days, it was like even only 10 or 15 years ago. Like, I mean, again, like with tech, the internet itself has become this incredible resource now. Sometimes not always accurate, as we know. And, it's always good to be looking beyond the first line of Google search or whatever.
Yeah,
Outside of me really constantly trying to keep a track of things like that. I mean, there are some really great organizations around. FSHD Global, which is Sydney-based, is a global research organization. They've been ahead of the game for a long time, and what they're
okay,
doing. Yeah, it's worth having a look at if you haven't seen
really
them.
good.
They actually have what's called the FSHD passport, I think they're calling it now, where they're gathering data on FSHD, people with FSHD,
Mm,
because then they'll use that for clinical trials and for, people doing their PhDs in different aspects of
brilliant.
neuromuscular disease. And, like, for example, so they often hold information sessions, which are either virtual or physical. And I've been to plenty of those sessions where I've heard from the top neurologists of the world talking about aspects of studies into FSHD, but then also being able to go and talk to them afterwards, like, which is, you never get that
Yeah,
first, right?
very interesting.
Um, yeah,
And MDA, I think we're both members of MDA,
yeah,
Muscular Dystrophy Australia, based in Melbourne.
yeah. So MDA is an interesting moment of its history, which is it's been around for a long time. It started off as sort of almost like a passion project by its original founder, Boris, because he could not understand why this disability or condition, there was not more sort of public awareness of it. And he's created this amazing organization, which in the last few years has begun sort of pivoting in a slightly different way as he's sort of approaching the point where, he wants to step back. And it's now sort of becoming, it's not that it's going to be better than it was, but it's going to be different to what it was,
Mm,
and so it's really, yeah, I think watch that space. I think over the next few years, and also just the general neuromuscular disease space as well. We're going to start to see more sort of progress and awareness than we've ever seen, thanks to people like groups like MDA and FSHD Global and MD Queensland and the rest, like all of them. They're all pushing to
mm,
make sure people have an understanding of muscular dystrophy, as opposed to what people confuse it with so often, like I was saying earlier, MS or MND or whatever.
yes, yeah.
Too many initialisms in the world, right? And
Yeah, that's right.
we can't expect everyone to know everything either, of course, right?
No, but all this is gonna be is hopefully helpful in the awareness, then the fundraising, which, equates to assisting people, that have got it at the time, but also assisting in research to
That's right.
hopefully find some answers and cures and
Yep. Yep.
or at least, just be able to stabilize it.
Yeah, and until we do, like, and provide other sort of services or information that at least helps people until we do,
Yeah.
again, I'm not going to plug MDA too much, but just there's a new program called Innovate, which is, trying to plug a hole in the market where young people transitioning from high school to university potentially don't know how to navigate that, like, because not like, I think, I don't know the statistics, I'm not going to quote it, but the statistic of the number of people with muscular dystrophy going on to study at university, it's not incredibly high.
Yeah.
And for quite obvious reasons, it's just,
Mm.
it's never been facilitated in a way that it should. So, again, this is MDA trying to at least offer some short-term to medium-term solutions to help people live the journey rather than
Yes, yeah.
sit back and wait to get to the destination.
Yeah, and of course, their Camp MDA for the young kids. The
Fantastic.
younger is just brilliant. That's been going that's yeah, Boris set that up in the early days.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
amazing.
finally, Paul, thank you. It's been a really fascinating interview. What's your advice to other people newly diagnosed? And are you, when your book comes out or anything, is there anywhere people can follow you on the socials, or are you sort of anywhere there? So
Yep,
advice, and where can we see you pop
sure.
up?
Look, I think I've sort of said this a few times. I understand that uncertainty and the fear and the all those mixed emotions, mostly sort of negative, that people will potentially have when they are first diagnosed. And I have friends who work in the medical profession as GPs or allied health professionals who have clients who have one of the various MDs. And a couple of them, have said to me, some of their clients, especially after diagnosis, are very down in the dumps, and I can totally understand that. And in fact, that would be the natural way to go anyway, because sometimes you have to go down before you can come up again anyway, right?
Mm,
And also you need time to process, and whether that's 1 month or 1 year or 10 years, everyone is different. But I would say that, like what you were saying before, especially for diagnosis from now, we live in a different time to what we did 5 years ago. And if you want to use NDIS as a marker 10 years ago, right? There are now more supports and assistance for people with a disability, notably with muscular dystrophy, than there have ever been.
mm,
Um, there is a growing awareness, and there is a campaign to increase that awareness. And so I think I would say, don't try not to turn your head from it. Turn towards it and look at it. And like the words I use in my book are, don't deny it, because if you deny it, like, you could actually go down a much darker path. But you don't have to necessarily embrace it either, because it's not something you want to embrace.
mm,
But you can resist it a bit. You can resist it.
mm,
Like even I think people who are sort of far more down the track than what I am, like there are still ways that you can sort of say, stuff you, MD. I am going to create a podcast about living with.
yeah.
I am going to travel to Europe still, because the NDS is going to give me a carer to take with me. I am going to write a book about whatever it is. I am going to have children still if that's my
Right.
choice. Like all of that.
Great advice to let people know they've got choices. Don't let your diagnosis completely, you know,
Define you.
define you and kind of make you feel like your life's ruined, like, because it's not.
And don't be embarrassed by it, because my friend who I was talking about earlier, who has MS, was very embarrassed about that diagnosis. And without giving too much away, it's because she was somewhat of a public figure. And so, of course, if you're in the public eye and something like this happens, as it did with, I think, Christina Applegate has MS, is it? Or one of those actors has
I think so.
MS.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I think she has.
You know, you're better to, like, I can understand why she felt embarrassed, and because she was becoming something that she, no, how can I put this? She felt she would become something other than herself, right? Whereas in fact, it is part of her, and it's taken her a while to sort of really embrace that, but she has now. She's telling more people. So I guess, to your point, don't you're being in imposition by reaching out to people and telling them, by the ones that you want to, and you don't have to either. It's your private medical information. No one needs to know. And in fact, again, this is where I will use the L word, lucky. Mostly when I tell someone that I have a FSHD, they have no idea at the moment. But then when I show them what it means, they can see it straight away, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not me hiding it. That's just the situation I'm in.
Mm,
Even if I was more advanced and it was clearly a much more sort of like visually obvious situation, I think like more people will probably want to help you than not. Certainly your friends will, certainly your family will, hopefully, some situations,
mm,
unfortunately not. But I think, like, I have friends who I joke with, and, like, so about 20% of people with FSHD potentially end up needing really quite, sort of heavy mobility aids, right? So I've said that to my friends. I could become one of that 20% at some point. And this is not to make light of it, but one of my friends was like, "Well, don't worry. If you can't get an electric one, I'll push you around in a chair without a motor."
yeah.
No,
And
and
they're the friends you need.
that's it, mate.
Yeah,
That's it.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I've got friends who said,
Well, the better friends are
oh,
the ones that really do follow through with that, but,
"Well,
I'm
there
sure
is
they
that.
do. Yeah,
There
that's
is."
right. I'm sure they will.
other friends just said, you can come and live with us, if you need to. Like,
Yeah, lovely. Yeah.
there are some great people. And this is why I think I'm glad I've become this collector of souls, because not that more means better, but I have such a broad group of people in my life
Yeah.
that who are all very supportive. No one has ever really been uncomfortable when I've told them. They've been surprised or offered solace, even though I haven't asked for it, which is understandable. And then I've explained that they don't need to do that, but their empathy is great. I don't need sympathy. I only need empathy, right? So, yeah, I think, so my advice really is, try and, when you're ready, when your moment arrives of feeling a little bit more settled with you, try and confront it and learn about it and find ways to manage it and live with it. And like, for example, I should have gone on to the NDIS 10 years ago, and I never did. I didn't think, oh, I don't need it. I can still do 98% of things.
Mm-hmm.
A year and a half ago, my physio said, just get on it. You should be on it, no matter how small a budget they give you. So don't fear to ask for help. Don't fear to look for help. Don't fear to look for information. Try and get an understanding of it, because the more you understand about it, probably the more you'll understand what's possible, and maybe you'll be able to grasp the possible, then get sort of under the dark cloud of the impossible, right?
Good advice. Lovely. And are you on the socials at all if people are interested in your story?
So
Anywhere?
despite working in the media, I am off socials altogether.
Fair enough. That's fine.
Yeah.
Do you have
But
a working title for the book if it ever comes
yes.
out?
So I've been through a few titles and I'm still not 100% decided.
Okay.
So the first title was Waiting for the Boy to Smile, because FSHD affects the muscles in the face, obviously.
Facial muscles, yeah.
I've always felt I have a really bad smile, even though I probably don't. But I'm very aware that smiling feels hard to do for me. So
So it's a conscious effort.
it is, yeah. And also I'm very conscious of it,
Yes.
So that was
And was that before your diagnosis that you were conscious that you were?
I was conscious of it because of the acting, yes, because I had to smile every time I would go
Okay, yes, yeah,
do a
right.
chat to camera. Can you give us a smile? And in fact, one of the little things in the book I talk about is being at like a concert, an outdoor concert, and without being too sort of silly, but a quite attractive woman smiled at me, and I smiled back, and she said to me, "Are you okay?" Because she thought I was sort of like
grimacing at her or
grimacing
something.
at her. Yeah, that was sort of one title, but I think
I thought, better work on my pickup technique.
yeah, exactly. And then I've sort of moved on to a few others, and I think I've now settled on The Road Less Stumbled, because
Oh, nice.
I like The Road Less Traveled. Like I was saying, that's one of my favorite poems. And, when you're diagnosed, there is a stumbling moment, there is a moment like we've just been talking about of, oh, what the hell does all this mean,
Yeah.
But also it's, again, a play on words in that foot drop with FSHD can be really, really an impediment to life. And I do trip a lot. So it feels nice to be able to incorporate one of my favorite lines from a poem with my life.
Very nice.
Through. But I think I found the right core of this, which is actually telling my story as opposed to trying to make it a self-help book or I got it right.
Yeah. Good on you. Let me know.
I will.
Stay in contact when it comes out, and
for sure.
all our listeners can sort of have a look at my socials. I'll share it around for sure.
Fantastic.
It's been lovely having you today, Paul Bugeja.
Thank you so much. It's been fantastic.
This is Leanne. Thanks for your time in listening to this podcast, You, Me and Muscular Dystrophy. To continue to help our community, it would be so great if you could like, share, subscribe and or comment on the show. Your feedback is always appreciated, and if you would like to be a guest, please contact me through Instagram, Leanne's_wheel_life, or email leanne@leanneswheellife.com. Take care until we come together on the next